Welcome to Forensic Friday,
where we examine the intersection of true crime, psychology, and the heart of being human in the middle of it all. So, we've done Gainesville Ripper with the lovely Lisa Vandergren. We did the Scream-inspired murder last week that was scary.
Yeah, that one was insane.
It's only natural that we would now do the case that you all have been begging us to do since we started this thing.
I know.
The Moscow murders.
Guys, this one has taken both of us, but Janine, some time
Oh,
put in for you guys.
I've read 2 books. I've watched shows. I have like 10 pages of notes. We're not doing all 10 pages of notes on here because it would be a 10-parter, which no one wants.
No,
No
yeah.
one wants that.
It's like when shows just never end. You're like, you should have ended like 10 seasons ago.
Absolutely. I'm not doing that to you guys. I tried to pick the highlights. If you have questions though, or things that we missed, please message us. You should already be following us on Instagram, but DM us with thoughts that you have and we'll put it on the podcast. We can look something up or consider something. We want you to interact with this for sure. So this is a lot to cover. I was trying to figure out a way to do it. And so let me tell you what the structure is going to be. If you need to take a break or you're kind of wondering how we're going to do it, this is what we're going to aspire to do today. We're going to start by giving some background of the victims and the area, including a little bit, maybe even on the police force. Then we're going to talk about the crime. Then we're going to get into kind of the court, some background on Brian Kohberger, but then also the court process, law enforcement, that kind of stuff. And then theories. We're going to talk about theories too. Because I have a few theories, and I'm sure you do, and so does everyone. We all have theories, right? So what I want to say first about this case, and then I want to know what you think, Nat. This case hit me smack dab in the face. Okay.
Yes.
I was bothered. I was bothered by all of it. I was like, first of all, this is so tragic, right? You know what? It was not unlike John Benet Ramsey, which we're also going to cover. That was closer to home for us, being Colorado people. But it was so big in a small area. And it's just unthinkable. It's a little bit unthinkable. This stuff does not happen at all the time, for sure. And I couldn't believe they didn't have a suspect. And it went on and on and on. And my true crime and forensic brain was dying slowly.
Yep.
And when they finally arrested someone and some of the information came in, it was like its itch in the back corner of my brain was getting scratched in the best way. So I know way too much about this.
I believe that.
Were you bothered?
Yeah, I mean, it was one for college students, like, I believe they were all seniors.
No,
right?
well, no. So 2 of them were 21 and 2 were 20, but they're all college kids.
All college kids, all at University of Idaho, just so you guys know.
And all of them, everyone in the house was a student. By different levels, different ages.
Yes, yeah. But that two of them were dating. The other 2 were best friends since childhood. I mean, it was crazy. And then, it's interesting. It didn't click for me, and I don't know why it didn't click for me right away. Like, it probably took me a day or two. Because I think I kept just hearing Idaho, but then finally I heard Moscow, Idaho. And I was like, oh crap, I lived in Pullman.
Yes.
For like a year.
I remember so I didn't know where exactly you had been when you were working. I assumed Seattle. I don't know. I just assumed.
I worked in Seattle after, but I started in Pullman.
And I didn't realize that. And so when you told me that, I thought that was so interesting. So you have a little more of an insider knowledge of the area, including how close the 2 towns are together.
Yes.
So tell me about the town of Moscow in particular, because here's what I found. I have 3 things I found about the town. Okay. There's 25,000 people there when school's in session, pretty much. In the off season, it's like half. So you know how Boulder feels kind of small in the off season? This would be like way
Yeah.
less than that because
Oh
Boulder's
yeah.
50,000 just in the university, but it's not a
Yep.
huge town.
Yep.
So this is smaller than I think a lot of people know who are
Yep.
thinking state school. You think a little
Yep.
bit bigger. This is not a very big area. They
Mm-mm.
have 37 officers in their police department.
Mm-hmm.
The last murder was 7 years before this one. So the last murders would have been in 2015. And
Yep.
not
I saw
murders
that.
plural. The last time someone was
But
murdered was like in
yep, was in
2015.
2015. Yep.
So tell us a little bit about the feel of Moscow and how Moscow and Pullman kind of
Yeah.
how people interact with those two places.
Moscow was like the more fun town between the two.
Mm,
So there was like more things to do. I do remember they had like a swing dancing bar, like a country swing bar.
that's kind of fun.
Yeah, there was just a little bit more. I remember they might still have it. Like the best bagel shop was there, like to get bagel sandwiches. Oh my goodness,
Mm,
they're good. Makes my mouth water now.
I do love a breakfast sandwich or a breakfast burrito.
Well, it's not even just breakfast. It was like you went there and it was like any time of day. They were open until like 2 or 3 a.m. I mean,
I miss that about a college town. I
yes,
will say.
I was gonna say they catered really well to the college scene. And I just remember Moscow was like a little bit more lively in like the night scene and just kind of like, like some fun
Mhm.
stuff. Whereas Pullman, I loved Pullman. It was just a little bit more calm,
Hmm.
you
And
know?
bigger, it sounds like. I think Washington State is bigger than University of Idaho by a fair bit.
Oh, maybe. I don't even remember. I'm gonna look it up.
And you said they're how far apart? We just looked it up. It's like 9 miles. It's like a 15-minute
Oh
drive.
yeah. So I was training for a half marathon when I lived there, and I would run between the two towns.
That's just wild to me.
Yeah.
Is
Oh,
it pretty? Because when I saw pictures of the house where this all happened, it looked kind of hilly. I don't know if it's pretty or
yeah.
not, but it looked
It's
hilly.
very pretty. Yes, so it's like on the Palouse, right? So
Oh,
it's,
okay.
yeah, it's beautiful, but different beautiful than what we're used to.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, it's farmland.
Mm. And they
Hmm,
have
but
water, which we don't have. We have epic mountains, but we don't have a
yes,
lot of water.
yes, yeah. So very farm town. Yeah.
Does it
It
have kind of a country western like feel? Yeah, I was gonna say the things that I saw, there were like
absolutely.
little cowboy boots in the window, and I just
Hmm.
could imagine that.
Hmm. 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 Yes. I'm looking up the population because I don't know, but I can't figure it out right now.
Oh yeah.
Um, of the two
I'm
schools.
pretty sure Pullman is pretty big. Like Washington State's pretty big. University of Washington's big.
Well, University of Washington, Seattle.
Right. Oh, but it's big. Real big.
Yes, but Washington State is much smaller than UW.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
and I know someone who went to Washington State and he came from kind of where people just have land. I mean, land,
Oh,
cattle,
yeah.
whole 9 yards.
Ton
Big
of it.
hunter,
Yep.
kind of a country
Yep.
person. So that's my
Yep.
only real frame of reference.
Well, that's it.
I've never even visited the Northwest.
Hmm.
Never. I've never really been to the Northwest. It's on my list. It's on my list of places to go.
Yeah, both areas are beautiful. I mean, I lived in both Pullman and Seattle. But yeah, Moscow was just a fun little area. It was really fun. We spent some good time there.
And not huge.
Mm-mm. No,
So
neither town was big. Like, here's the thing. I you and I both went to Boulder. Boulder's massive,
it's big.
right? I went to when I lived in Pullman, and I mean, I was doing college ministry, so I was on campus a lot, and I would see the same people all the time.
And that's in Pullman.
And that's in Pullman.
Yeah.
Pullman's tiny. I mean, Pullman's a tiny town.
Yeah. So interesting.
Yeah, they're both small towns.
That lends itself to another theory that I have, but we'll get to that.
Okay.
Okay, so let's talk for a minute about the victims. First of all, can we just talk about how the four of these people just like walked off of an LL Bean catalog. Like it's a little bit ridiculous. Like they're
Really?
beautiful humans.
All of them.
Everyone who
Mhm.
lived in the house. It's like it was a prerequisite. You had to look like you
Mhm.
had your stuff together and be absolutely beautiful,
Mhm.
which, is a little baffling. There's that one picture of them that's so beautiful and it's before a football game and they're all together,
Mhm.
all the roommates plus an Ethan. And I get the sense Ethan was there quite a bit.
Well, yeah, I feel like he basically lived there without living there.
That's the feeling I get too.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you rather be with your girlfriend than being in the frat house? I mean, they hung out at the frat house all the time, but I think when it was
Mhm.
time to go home, he wanted to be with Xana.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Ugh, I'm
Yes.
already sad. I This case just fires me up. Okay, so Kaylee, their first of all, their backgrounds are really interesting and
Mhm.
different, and the way that they likely interacted as friends based on their backgrounds
Mhm.
is also
Mhm.
interesting.
Yes.
Kaylee was born in the San Francisco Bay Area in a
Mhm.
small town around there, and then they moved to Idaho when she was a kiddo.
Yeah. I have quite a bit on them.
Oh, I love this. You can jump in at any point.
Perfect.
They lived in a big home in Coeur d'Alene. And then they moved to Rathdrum, which I guess was 13 miles away, and they lived on like 7 acres in a huge house. She
Mhm.
was the middle of five kids. She had an adventurous and mischievous streak in
Mhm.
her. I think she was really fun and funny, and people just loved her. But she would
Mhm.
play pranks on people sometimes and was just kind of a goof in the best
Mhm.
way.
Mhm.
She went to middle school at a charter, and I don't think she loved that. It was an amazing school, but you had to dress a certain way. My kiddo goes to a charter school and he's got to wear the uniform and the whole 9 yards. And I would have hated that as a girl. My son doesn't care at all, but me, I would have been like, I have to wear this every single day. Like, how boring is that?
Mhm.
Well, Kaylee and Maddie met in sixth grade at this charter school. And by all accounts, they were best friends immediately.
Mhm.
It was pretty immediate, and Maddie kind of became an honorary member of Kaylee's family.
Mhm.
So the two of them, did you read this part? They came up with a proposal.
Yeah, no, I have it all. Yeah.
Okay,
Everything you're saying, I have it all.
tell them about the proposal because this
The
is
proposal, well, because they didn't go to the same school,
they went to the charter together.
but I thought
Mm-mm.
Haley already went there. And that's
No,
why she wanted to go because she wanted to cheer.
no, they wanted to go together.
Oh, to cheer
So
together.
they were both in this charter school, and they are hating it. it.
Well,
It's hard, and they have to wear uniforms, and so they were both like, "We're going to public high school, people."
I think they wanted to cheer.
Well, I cheer. I didn't hear about cheer. I think that's cool if they did. I don't know
Yeah.
that part, but I do know that they wanted to go together.
Mm-hmm.
And the only good thing about middle school for either one of them, the thing that they loved was that they met each other.
Mm-hmm.
So they went through middle school together, and then they made that proposal, and within a year they were at the public school together,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
which I think is just so cute.
I know, it is really cute.
So then they had a real traditional high school experience. Like they got to have their homecoming and their this and their
Mm-hmm.
that. And that made me really happy. And when you think about how short their life ended up being, if I
Mm-hmm.
was their parents, I would be really happy that I let them have that opportunity.
Yeah. Well, and Maddie was super smart. I mean, she made the dean's list every year.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, she was like a go-getter. I don't know if you saw all three girls were in the same sorority.
Well, let's shift into Maddie in a second because I have a little bit more on Kaylee.
Yes, 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 yes. Okay, sorry. Yep.
Kaylee and Maddie became besties in this middle school, in this charter school.
Yep.
And one of their English teachers actually said their names just sort of went together, almost like it was hyphenated, like
Yep.
Kaylee and Madison. Like
Mhm,
they're always
mhm.
together. One of my favorite things about Kaylee is she was a true crime girly.
Mm.
I mean, this is our girl. She actually got involved in a local case when she saw a woman that looked like a woman that was missing in the area. Got involved. I mean,
Wow.
yeah, reported it, all the things. Her favorite true crime personality was TikToker and YouTuber Olivia Vitale.
Okay.
And when her father was reeling after the murder, he reached out to this true crime person and asked her to pursue it.
Wow.
Find leads and pursue it. Isn't that wild?
That is wild.
Anything else you have on Kaylee? And then we're going to switch into talking about Maddie.
I do just have a little bit of like, not necessarily her history, but just things that she had going on for her. She had recently bought a car. So I watched the whole thing with her dad, and her dad was so proud of her. But she had recently bought a car and then planned this whole, which was like hers. I mean, no one helped her buy it. That was like
Yep.
why it was such a big deal to her dad. Like
Oh,
she really
yeah.
just took ownership of her life. Had planned a trip to Europe and was planning to move to Texas after graduating.
She had already landed a job at an IT firm in Austin, which is
Yep.
amazing.
Yep.
And she had already moved out. She only came back to show Maddie her car.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh,
Which makes sense that why they were in the same room in the same bed.
mm-hmm.
So also I thought this was really interesting because I think you already said this, that she's the middle of five kids. And her oldest sister, I thought this was really sweet, had a baby girl after the death of all of them and
Yeah.
named her Theodora Maddie Kay. So
Yeah.
obviously Maddie Kay is after Madison and Kaylee. And what was strange about this is the room number that Theodora was born in was 1113, which
Mm,
was the same day that they all passed away.
mm.
And the time that this little girl was born was 4:21 a.m., which
Yeah.
you'll get more into all of that stuff with the murders, but just keep that in mind for everybody listening that
Yeah.
this little girl was born at that time.
Absolutely. It was like right around that time.
Hmm. Hmm.
Very cool. I had that written down too. I think that's just amazing. The other thing that's interesting is you get the sense Kaylee had a pretty cushy life. Her family, she worked hard. Obviously, she got this job. She worked hard in school,
Hmm.
but they really took Maddie in.
Hmm.
And Maddie loved her parents and everything, but I think Kaylee's family gave Maddie some opportunities she might not have had otherwise.
Mm.
So Maddie was born in Eugene, Oregon, which is a small artsy college town.
Hmm.
And then when she was 2 years old, they moved to Coeur d'Alene.
Hmm.
When she was little, like around that age, her parents separated. Her
Hmm.
mom remarried her stepdad, Scott, I think was his name, stepdad. Maddie called her father and her stepfather dad.
Hmm.
So Maddie and Kaylee again were inseparable through high school, middle school, and high school. Kaylee was likely to treat Maddie sometimes when they'd go out to eat or take vacations, things that Maddie probably couldn't afford. Kaylee sometimes made those things available for Maddie. Maddie got great grades, worked multiple jobs, vacationed with Kaylee's family all over the place. Dad had addiction issues when Maddie was really little, which is part of why they split.
Hmm.
He had remarried before the murders happened, and that woman was struggling with drug addiction and was
Hmm.
actually in jail when the murder took place.
Hmm.
And then Maddie and Kaylee, I thought this was interesting. They pledged different sororities
Hmm.
at U of I, which is kind of interesting that they wouldn't do the same sorority, but that's where Maddie met Xana.
Yep.
So Maddie met Xana at Pi Phi
Yep.
sorority. And then Maddie met Jake
Schreiger.
Schreiger. Thank you. Okay. Maddie met Jake Schreiger in college. They were on and off for 2 years. And then unfortunately, and we're going to get into this, but the family supported Jake the whole time that he was
Mm.
not involved, but he had a lot of shade coming his way
Mhm.
online. Both of the boyfriends, ex-boyfriends, had that happen from the online sleuths. They were like, I know who it is, the boyfriend, because a lot of times it is.
Mhm.
What else did you have on Maddie?
She did go to that. She was in the same sorority, and she also worked at the same restaurant as Anna, the Greek
Mhm.
restaurant.
Mad Greek. Wasn't it called Mad Greek?
Yeah, I didn't have much else on Maddie. You pretty much named everything I had.
Okay. So then moving on to Xana Kernodle. She
Mm-hmm.
had an older sister, Jasmine. They were really, really close growing up. Her father was incarcerated for drug issues when she was really little, and her mother also suffered with drug addiction. So they ended up moving in with Aunt Kim for like 2 years until
Mm-hmm.
dad could get more stable and kind of get his life together.
Yeah.
Aunt Kim sounds awesome. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I think Aunt Kim was really fun to be with. And to dad's credit, he really found a way to get it
Mm-hmm.
together.
Mm-hmm.
Santa was a talented gymnast. Her mom continued to struggle with addiction all the way through and beyond the murders. She
Mm-hmm.
had 40 police interactions
Mm-hmm.
while Santa was growing up. Days after the murders, so mom went to the service, the memorial. Days after that, she relapsed and went back to jail.
Mm-hmm. I mean, that makes sense to me.
Oh, it makes total sense. And basically, she couldn't even speak at the memorial. She was so upset and then went on a 4 day
Bender.
methamphetamine and fentanyl
Yeah.
bender.
Yeah. I
And
believe.
those drugs are just
I'm shocked she's still alive, to be honest.
absolutely. And so I really feel for her. The
Mhm.
interesting thing is the attorney for Xana's mom is the same attorney that represented Maddie Mogan's family when they had drug issues. Because
Dang.
this is a small area, there's a lot of crossover like that.
Mm-hmm.
And the way that I got a little bit of insider information is at one of our conferences last year.
Mm-hmm.
I ended up talking to someone who works in that court district, which is really small. Not a
Mm-hmm.
ton of attorneys, not a ton of therapists, not a ton of any of that. And I talked to a woman who did not know Brian Kohberger, didn't treat him, didn't evaluate him. So I'm not violating any confidentiality.
Yeah.
But she did see him in jail and
Dang.
had an interaction with him in jail. And he was a blank slate. She said it was so scary, like
That's crazy.
just vacant.
That's wild.
Yeah. So, and you could see, I mean, the fear in her face when she talked about him. And this is a woman who does what we do, like interviews people
Right.
all the time. And
Right.
yeah, so it's kind of interesting.
That's nuts.
Why don't you tell us about Ethan?
Oh, I love Ethan.
I do too.
So Ethan was from Washington, Conway, Washington,
Mm.
and he was a triplet.
I know this is why you should talk about him because you're a twin.
Yes, triplets a different game. Can't even imagine.
Oh my
I
gosh.
can't even imagine carrying two, let alone three people in your
Mm.
body for that long. Anyway,
Oh yeah.
so he was a triplet, so he had a brother and a sister, and he was a big athlete, played basketball and tennis, and was a massive country music fan.
Oh,
So kind of fits within those smaller eastern towns in Washington. I'm just assuming Conway, Washington's east. I could be so wrong.
ah. Well, and the other thing is the two brothers, all
Hmm.
three were involved in the Greek system and all three went to U of I. So they were all
Oh
involved
yeah.
in the university. But the
Yeah.
two brothers decided to do the same fraternity too. So they were in
Oh
thick
yeah.
tie together.
Yeah. Here's the thing. When you have like a sibling bond like that, you either do everything the opposite of each other or you're
Yeah.
best friends and you do everything the same.
Yeah.
Yep. So I have that they started school together. They all went to the same place, which is just really sweet.
Yeah.
Him and his brother in the same fraternity. And he was majoring in recreation sports and tourism management.
Hmm.
And as we've stated, I think we stated this already. If not, he was dating Xana.
He was dating Xana, and the family loved Xana.
Yes.
They were pretty serious.
Yeah, they were together. They were serious. They were together about a year.
Yep.
Yep. So his family described him as being such a great human. One of them said that he's one of the few people that there wasn't like nothing bad about him. He was 100% pure and he was honest and just a great human.
And
Um,
funny. He was kind of the comedian of the family and the
Super
comedian of the
goofy.
triplets.
Yes, just a goofy guy. He also worked, which this like threw me off guard a little bit in a good way. He
Yeah.
worked in a tulip field.
I know, I loved this.
I know. So his boss said tulips are a big part of what it means to grow up in I'm gonna butcher this Skagit Valley,
Agate Valley, yeah.
and he just loved doing it.
Think about how many tulips Xana got. Also, I love tulips, so
I know.
it's kind of sweet.
I know. Yeah, overall, like I read a few different interviews about Ethan, and everyone said he was just such a great guy, funny, would just light up the room. I think that was the biggest thing about him, and that he loved his family.
Loved his family. And I
Mhm.
think on that note, when we start talking about the night of November 12th in 2022, which is when this all went down,
Mhm.
technically the morning of the 13th, but it all started on the night of the 12th.
Mhm.
Ethan took his sister Maisie to
Mhm.
her Kappa Alpha Theta sorority formal. Her other brother Hunter, so the third triplet, took her roommate. So the
Mm.
four of them went to this formal together. But by
Mhm.
9 p.m., Ethan was meeting up with Xana at the Sigma Chi house, which is about a quarter mile from the King Road home where the murders happened.
Mhm. Mhm.
And they were partying together and having a nice time. And then they walked home kind of around 2 a.m.
Mhm.
Right around 2 a.m., they walked home. Meanwhile, downtown, Kaylee and Maddie went to the corner club where they hung out with friends, including Kaylee's off and on again boyfriend, Jack DeCour. DeCour? DeCour.
I'll go with the second one.
Jack DeCour. And these two shared a golden doodle named Murphy. And by all accounts, they were on great terms. It's widely speculated that Kaylee called Jack numerous times that evening to try to reconcile. They
Mm.
even called from Maddie's phone, too. You know how you sometimes call from your bestie's phone, and they were all very close.
Mhm.
Their body language, their posture towards each other at the club was casual and friendly, and her family defended Jack the whole time because immediately there was speculation about Jack because of the phone calls and they were on and off again. Period. They weren't together when this happened, so there was a lot of speculation, but the family staunchly defended him the whole time.
Mhm.
On the night that all of this went down, when they left the corner club, some random frat bro friend, like friend of a friend, Jack Showalter, tagged along with Kaylee and Maddie to the grub truck to get food before heading home. It's widely believed that he was just kind of keeping them safe. Like, I think he was just trying to get them home safely. Who knows what was really going on? Kaylee ordered a carbonara to share
Mhm.
with Maddie.
Mhm.
And the girls were kind of doing girl things. They're like standing together and they're whispering and they're doing their thing. Well, Kaylee orders a ride share and they ditch Jack. So they get taken home. Jack doesn't take them home. Meanwhile, Jack, the internet sleuths, when this all came out, became also a big suspect because
Was he the hoodie guy?
he was the hoodie guy.
Okay.
So the grub truck had, and I guess the grub truck was known for this, they had closed circuit like television monitoring, but they actually streamed from inside the truck.
Right.
So you could see people ordering, but this was like a thing that this truck did. It was part of their deal.
Hmm.
They showed what was happening on the truck. So they happened to get some of the last information about the girls, what they were wearing, what they were doing, what mood they were
Yeah.
in, all of it.
Yeah.
And so, I think they were normal kids doing normal kid things. I mean, this is something I would have done in college. They weren't falling down drunk, but they were a little drunk. They had fun. They're 21, you know.
Mhm.
And poor Jack, man, he just happened to be standing there in a hoodie and people were coming for him. He got death threats
Mhm.
and everything else. So the girls got home around 2:30. So they got in a ride share and they get home around 2:30. Meanwhile, at the house, there's a few more roommates we have to account for. Bethany Funky or Funk,
Okay.
she was on the first floor. She was 19 years old and she had a window facing the parking area.
Mhm.
She grew up in Reno. She was in the Pi Beta Phi sorority with Xana and Maddie.
Mhm.
Also blonde, looked just like the roommates. The only brunette in the house were Ethan and Xana.
Yeah.
The rest of the girls were all blondies.
Yeah.
And the really sad thing that I read is the headlights from everything that happened, including the suspect, would have come in her window. She
Mhm.
faced the parking area, but she was asleep. She slept through the entire thing on the first floor. She didn't
Mm.
know anything. She just was sleeping. It was late. She was sleeping. And they speculate that she was just used to a lot of noise. She was used to lights in the window. I mean, you kind of learn in college. I
Yeah.
lived in a sorority house. I could sleep through anything in college. I've been a light
Yeah.
sleeper my whole life. But in college, you just kind of learn. I slept through an alarm one time. My big sis in the sorority fell asleep in the doorway where the
Yeah.
alarm went off for an hour. Nobody went and looked. We just kept sleeping. Like, I'm not going to get up for that, just another day.
That's crazy to me.
Oh, the Greek system is a whole nother level. So I can understand there were
Fair.
so
That's
many
fair.
questions like, how would they have their doors unlocked and all this stuff? And I'm like, oh my gosh, they were just kids in college. I mean, I didn't lock my doors.
And well, we sure as heck did in Boulder because we lived on the hill. But
I did in an apartment, but the Greek system and the house is right by the Greek system in Boulder.
right.
It's just people just come and go like it's their own place.
Well, yeah, in the Greek system, but were the roommates door unlocked?
Well, yeah, because they're all in the Greek system. So this house was almost like an extension party house of the Greek system.
Sure. Well, what I was going to say too is that kind of shows the mindset of a small town.
Oh yeah, small town, but also a Greek system.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Because they
mean,
have codes. So my sorority house had a code to get in. You can't give
sure.
80 people a key. I lived in a room with four girls, maybe
Yeah.
four or five girls. We didn't all have keys.
Sure.
But what we did have was a code. We could get in and out. Well, all kinds of people had that code. I fell over a guy one time. I had to pee in the middle of the night and I get up and I fall over a guy in the doorway. My doorway to my room. I didn't know who he was. He was
That's
passed out in the doorway. I fell over him and I was like, go home. Like, whatever. He didn't even wake up.
was
It's why, I mean,
he
really, it's a
alive?
different thing. Well, you know what? I didn't check.
Well,
This is the thing, you guys. It's so different. It's everything that I wouldn't do now. The
mm-hmm.
Greek system just was kind of loose. And I think this is true anywhere, probably especially in a small town. So this poor roommate, Bethany, on the first floor, she was just sleeping and probably accustomed to a lot of noise.
Yeah.
Now her bedroom door may have been locked. I didn't see anything about that. So all of the rooms had a lock on the door, their own door, but the outside entrances were frequently unlocked and a lot of people knew
Gotcha.
the code. Yeah.
Gotcha.
Between 3:30 and 4 a.m., a vehicle made three passes by the house. So keep that in mind. Just a random vehicle makes three passes within a half hour.
Mm-hmm.
So Dylan Mortensen, she lived on the second floor of the house across from Xana. What's interesting, the house is weird the way it's laid out. You have these three floors, and you can actually get in on the first or the second floor of the house. And so Dylan, while she lived across from Xana, couldn't really see Xana's door because she shared a wall with the living room and was close to the kitchen. So they were
Okay.
kind of on opposite ends of the first floor.
Okay.
So Dylan, also blonde, raised by her mother and stepfather, she woke up around 2 a.m. when Ethan and Xana got home. She fell back asleep. She woke up again at 4 a.m. And it sounded like Kaylee, who was right above her, was playing with her dog Murphy. So from her bedroom, she yells for them to calm down because she's trying to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't answer. She heard either Xana or Kaylee, she couldn't tell which direction it was coming from,
Yeah.
say, there's someone here. She got up, opened her bedroom door, and looked towards the third floor stairwell, but saw nothing.
Hmm.
So she closed her bedroom door and returned to bed. Then she heard more noise.
Mm.
Someone was in Xana's bedroom crying. She opened the door again and peeked out. She didn't see anything. The room wasn't visible from her room, so she couldn't see. She knew the noise was coming from that floor, but
Mhm.
she didn't have a visual on Xana's doorway. She heard a male voice say, "It's okay, I'm going to help you." She thought it was maybe Xana crying, maybe something had happened and Ethan was maybe going to help. So she closed the door.
Mm.
Then she hears more crying and she opened the door for a third time. A man dressed in all black with a black mask over his mouth and nose was walking towards her. He was athletic but not particularly muscular, 5'10" or taller with bushy eyebrows. He literally brushed past her doorway without acknowledging her and exited through the sliding glass door. Everything else was quiet in the house, so Dylan locked herself in the bedroom for the remainder of the night.
That's terrifying.
What are you thinking over there, buddy? Your eyes are so big.
I mean, I like because this case happened a little bit ago, there's, I've already heard a lot of this, but it's like even rethinking about it and like knowing more because I didn't know as much around like where everyone's rooms were and whatever, but I
Oh,
knew like
yeah.
she had peeked out and whatever. Was she the one you said she was the one who saw the bushy eyebrows?
She's the one
Okay.
who saw the bushy eyebrows. And immediately after, what police announced was that two roommates had been
Hmm.
on the first floor and slept through the whole thing because they hadn't caught this dude and they
Mm.
didn't want to let on that she said anything.
Oh,
So they actually protected her by saying she was on the first floor and didn't hear it, and that those two had slept through everything because they didn't
yeah.
know if the man saw her, but they
Right.
certainly didn't want to expose that they did,
Right.
you
Oh,
know?
that's crazy.
No, it's so creepy.
I mean, like being so young, I don't know if like I want to think that I would have done something different, but you just don't know. And I know
Oh,
she got a lot of flack for not doing anything.
yes.
But it's like you don't know what type of state your body and your brain's going to be in when you are experiencing something so horrific.
Oh my gosh, our bodies and our brains are not meant to absorb
Mm-mm.
trauma to that degree. And so, how many times is there a mass shooting and people go, "I thought it was fireworks," even though
Mm-hmm.
fireworks would make no sense in the middle of the mall? Our brain wants to go to something that's not scary.
Mm-hmm.
We want to find a better reason for things.
Well, and think about it. I mean, like, I just now in my 30s, if I hear a strange noise, I'll go look and see what it is. When I was younger, I would
Yeah.
just stay in my room and pray to Jesus that nothing insane was happening.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean,
So,
I think she was afraid, but she also probably had a lot of competing thoughts in her brain. Like,
yeah.
we're coming off COVID, people were wearing masks. It's not like he was wearing the scream mask, he was wearing a black mask over his nose and mouth. That could have been a COVID thing. She didn't really know. She didn't really know. She didn't have a good feeling about it. And she was scared enough that she closed the door and locked it. And she was kind of frozen for a minute.
Mhm.
But I could see her also convincing herself it was nothing because the alternative was too scary to think about. And she
Mhm.
certainly is not going to assume he just murdered four of her roommates, right? So I just took you through from the roommate's point of view that heard all of the noise. But
Mhm.
now I'm going to take you through from the unsub, initially was an unsub, unidentified subject,
Okay.
offender view. So this is speculated to be Kohberger. We
Okay.
don't know that for sure, but this is what that human did in a nutshell.
Okay.
They believe he drove past the home 3 times. He made
Hmm.
a weird 3-point turn. He parked on a parking bluff in the woods overlooking the house. Kaylee's bedroom window was visible from that parking bluff, and the sliding glass door was below that window. In the months leading up to the offense, his phone pinged off nearby cell towers at least a dozen times.
Right.
Now, the house, as we've established, this is not a huge town. The house isn't that far from where he might have been going in the town, but it is a
Mhm.
little bit off the beaten path. And these are pretty specific cell phone towers that he was pinging off.
Mhm.
He goes in the sliding glass door. He went immediately upstairs to the third floor. Murphy barked through the whole attack on that floor, they believe, based on the timeline. He entered the first room, so he went right into the room. Maddie and Kaylee ultimately were found dead in the same bed.
Mhm.
Now, initially they came out and said every people were asleep. Well, that was humane. Actually, the evidence, and they're not going into great detail, but people close to the investigation have said they were not all asleep. Some of
Mm.
them had defensive wounds, and at least one of the victims had overkill, which we'll talk about in a few minutes.
Well, yeah. Okay. I'm
Yeah,
sure.
we're going to talk about
Yeah.
that in a few minutes.
Okay.
But,
And which ones had defensive wounds?
and which ones had defensive wounds? So we're going
Okay.
to get into that. This person who committed this crime then went back downstairs, likely ran into Ethan in the doorway of Xana's room, and they know this from the positioning of the bodies. He was likely killed in the threshold in that
Mm.
doorway. So if you think about how probably Xana said there's
Mhm.
someone here, that
Mhm.
timing makes more sense. And the fact that Dylan heard it.
Mhm.
Um, Ethan was killed in the doorway. The veins of his neck were severed. So even though he's large and strong and probably was investigating what was going on standing in the doorway, he's no match for the weapon.
Oh,
And
not
he
being
gets
surprised like that.
so he gets attacked and shoved in. And then Precious Xana, 5'3" 112 pounds, put up a fight. And she
Mm.
was found with defensive wounds on her arm, but she also was no match for
Mm-mm.
that kind of weapon.
Mhm.
4:20 a.m. he got back in his car and he sped away. And he drove down south on US 95 for half an hour, passing Blaine, which is in a remote farm country. Kept driving. He did a little bit of like a circular route.
He
And
went
then
a long way.
he went the long way and likely did a circle even
Yeah.
before he swung back through into Washington State to the Pullman campus, to the campus in Pullman.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the offender's point of view. Like that's the crime in a nutshell. So I want to take a second and I want to talk about law enforcement because I
Mhm.
don't know how much you know about this, but everyone was so frustrated initially with law enforcement. And y'all know Nat and I we can get very frustrated when law enforcement mishandles a case, right? This happened with Gabby Petito. It's happened in some other cases too. I don't think that's the truth here, and I'll tell you why. So, the chief of police, James Fry, was 53 years old. He'd been in the Moscow PD forever. He joined as a reservist in 93 and was a full-time officer starting in 1995. He'd been the chief since 2016, and he's not a small town investigator. So one of my fears in the beginning was like, oh man, we're going to have Deputy Doodah out there and wherever. Oh no, he trained with the FBI in DC at a training academy that only accepts 1% of the police applicants. He was a badass and he did a 10-week program that allowed him to make all the connections with the FBI that he needed for this case. This was a strong law enforcement officer with a lot of knowledge about investigations. This was not just some schmo.
Yeah, that's awesome.
His corporal, the guy that Chief Fry decided to make the point underneath him was Corporal Brett Payne of Moscow PD. 33 years old, fit, shaved head. He was a paratrooper in Afghanistan with the 82nd Airborne Division in the Army. He'd been a police officer for 4 years, two with Moscow PD, and he was Rookie of the Year in 2020. He received 3 awards for excellence in his first couple years with the force. I mean, this guy's not a schmo either.
Right. That's nuts.
So I'm really thankful to see this. And the other thing is all of the families and the law enforcement folks were really entrenched in this community and this area. So they cared a lot. And so I understand why the victims' families were so upset in the beginning, which, by the way, they have since connected much better. Like they
Yeah.
came to an understanding, but initially it was like, what the hell are you guys doing? Which I was also thinking,
Right.
how do we not know anything? Well, this police force was willing to look incompetent to
Hmm.
ultimately catch the killer and is still keeping the information confidential.
Yeah, because they didn't want to tip off that they were onto something.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, that makes total sense.
Doesn't that make sense? But I remember feeling in the beginning like, oh, this is either really bad or it's really good.
Hmm.
I actually thought that. I was like, they're either real, they know something because they were so quiet and bumbling in the press conferences, or it's going to be real bad.
Hmm.
Right. Okay. So here's law enforcement's perspective. So the person who made the 911 call around noon was Hunter Johnson, who's Ethan's best friend. And he
Mm.
called on Dylan's phone. So much weirdness happening there.
I did not know that. I thought one of the roommates ended up calling eventually.
Well, they thought that, but it because it was one of the roommates' phones, but it was actually Hunter Johnson, Ethan's best friend, who made the call. Hunter was also the one who found the bodies, like went into the house and saw what happened.
So did the roommate call Hunter to come over?
Yes.
Oh,
This is one of the
I did
weird
not know
things.
that.
There's been all kinds of speculation around this,
Yeah.
but yeah, there was like a call that went out from Dylan specifically to some of their friends, including Ethan's best friend. I actually think his brother was one of the first people on the scene. Like there were people who were
Mm.
there. And then they called, and the call was that there was an unconscious person. Well, it turns out that's actually like a placeholder in the 911 transcript because they haven't released it.
Oh, dang.
So it may actually have been something very different than that that was said. But
Hmm.
that was what they put in there because they had to have something in there.
Dang.
Uh-huh. I thought that was so interesting because I'm like an unconscious person. Like what happened? I mean, did she faint? And then
Mhm.
people found her. No, it was a whole. We're going to find out during the trial, I think, what all of that was.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Corporal Payne toured the house at about 4 p.m. that day.
Hmm.
Okay. So the victims had been dead for about 12 hours when he's walking through the scene. There were already people working the scene, but that's when he walked through.
Okay.
Next to Maddie's body, partially concealed in the comforter, was the tan leather knife sheath. And they were able to pull some DNA off of that sheath, which we'll come back to.
Hmm.
Both Kaylee and Maddie were viciously murdered. One was overkill, which implies that there was a primary victim that was targeted.
Hmm.
No signs of sexual assault. And one of the things that they've kind of theorized is one of the girls was more of the target.
Hmm.
The other one couldn't get away because the bed was in the corner of the room. It's a small room, and
Hmm.
the bed was pushed up against the wall on one side, and the headboard was also against the wall.
Yep.
So this
So
person was
she couldn't get
kind
away.
of caged in and couldn't get away.
Yep.
Yep. So they're trying to process the DNA. They're looking at the scene. This is a nightmare because this is the party house. The cops had been there many times for noise complaints. This
Hmm.
is a known party house. We don't even know how many people have gone through this scene. And
Hmm.
we had people who got there before police that could have affected the scene, which that's a concern during the
Yeah.
trial for sure.
Yeah.
So the students start leaving in mass. My parents would have been like, get your butt home. Like, I already know I would have been on a plane coming home.
Yeah.
It's after the pandemic, so they can do so much virtually anyway.
Hmm.
And they talked about they had these like robots from this thing called the Starship fleet that would deliver food to the rooms. So, like, nobody's walking around, nobody's doing anything. Students are coming
Interesting.
home, people who are getting food, it's getting delivered literally by robot.
Yeah.
And another law enforcement person gets tagged in, Colonel Hendrik Wills, who's the director of the Idaho State Police. He has a master's degree and he's trained with the Department of Homeland Security and the FBI. Also, not a slouch. So we have some good brains, smart people working on this. So
Mhm.
before I get into the evidence, what do you know about the evidence, Nat?
Well, I don't know a ton, but I do know what I do know leaves a lot of holes.
There are maybe some holes because it's circumstantial.
Yes. So the evidence that I know of, like I said, it's not a ton,
Mm-mm.
but well, one, so there's three other DNA samples from three other people.
Yes, two inside and one outside, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah,
And then there's a glove that wasn't connected to the identified human that is allegedly the killer.
right.
They tried to look at this Instagram account that followed Maddie and some of the victims, but that also could have been fake.
Could be. The timing on it, though, likely not fake.
So yes, so they talked to, so I don't know, there's probably more in what you've researched.
Yeah.
They talked about that this person went and liked all these things. It doesn't always show you, well, let me check. I'm going to check my Instagram
Oh, yeah.
because I don't know if it always shows you when someone's liked something. So I can go back and like stalk someone's account and like all their pictures.
Well, they can. There's a digital footprint of that, though.
Okay.
They are pretty confident that this particular account
Uh-huh.
followed them and followed a few family members.
Okay.
And they did tie it to his stuff. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's good.
Yeah. But I
Okay. The
agree
other
with you
thing.
that I'll get to a piece that's really concerning actually about the evidence, but there were questions around that. Everything I read said they're almost certain that that was his account.
Okay.
Yeah.
But still some speculation potentially there.
Yeah. Well, and they have to account for the other DNA for sure.
And just the evidence that's been shared, at least to
Yeah.
like the general public who probably haven't done as deep of a dive as you have,
Yes.
this doesn't necessarily scream this is the guy.
Well, and one of the things I can say about an affidavit for arrest, and this is true, you
Yeah.
and I read these all the time,
Yeah.
they intentionally put the smallest amount of stuff possible. They
Yes.
don't want to show their hand, but they want to have enough to get a
Mhm.
warrant,
Mhm.
like a search warrant, and
Mhm.
also a physical warrant to arrest someone.
Yes.
So when Brett Payne put together the affidavit, they used the lowest common denominator evidence that they could find to generate enough suspicion to validate a warrant. They're not going to put some of the stronger evidence in the affidavit.
Right. And I do
But
know
you
that.
were right, though. A lot of the things in there feel kind of circumstantial. There's a lot
Yes.
of it, but some of it's pretty circumstantial.
Yes. And so for someone, like I said, like I know you've read the affidavit, you've read a little bit more.
Oh,
And
yeah.
I know you like even you don't even probably know
Mm-mm.
strongest pieces of evidence. Thank the
No.
Lord, right? Like thank God
We
none of us.
won't know until trial, and that's if they let it out at trial.
Mm-hmm.
We may
Mm-hmm.
not know until there's a final conclusion to this whole thing,
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mm-hmm.
What's
So
interesting that I do want to throw in there is Kohberger did a project in his program, I believe it was his undergrad program, that was on cloud security and evidence. So he did a whole project on how the cloud works and if there's evidence and stuff in cloud computing.
interesting.
That's
I
fascinating
mean,
to me.
here's the thing. Here's the thing. Devil's advocate, right? The dude looked up a lot of weird stuff, reached out to prisoners, all the stuff. He was a weird dude.
Oh, yeah. Well, people would look at our search history and think that we're nuts too.
Exactly. So, and he was studying
Criminology.
criminology. And
Absolutely.
so, and I just want everyone to know, I do think he did it. I'm not saying I don't.
Yeah.
What
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
saying though is based on what I know and what the general public knows,
Yes.
like I said, doesn't scream. This is 100% without a doubt
Yes.
the dude.
Well, and here's the things in the affidavit that are like they're showing their hand on these things. The K-bar knife, obviously they looked at that and they were able to pull. That's not just random DNA. It is
Right.
his DNA on a knife sheath that matches the knife that would have been used to make these kind of wounds. They don't have the weapon, but
Mhm.
this is the type of weapon that would make this kind of wound on the victim.
Wasn't wasn't the evidence his dad's? Like, wasn't like it
Well, I'll get into that, the way that they
okay.
found out. Yeah.
Okay.
They went out. So there was a shoe print with a distinct style. It's in the Vans. It has the diagonal, kind of the diamond style of like a Vans shoe
Yeah.
with a shoe size. They also found a shoe at his apartment, which is a whole nother document that I'll get into later. But they went and they got all of this data. So they went to iCloud, Tinder, Venmo. I mean, they just went through everything. They got warrants for 40 other Tinder accounts tied to Kaylee.
Wow.
Then they also went into Maddie's and they went back 2 years and talked to a lot of those folks. So they didn't just zero in on Kohberger, they talked to a lot of people. They
Okay.
got info from DoorDash, they got a bunch of security camera footage, with I'm sure a lot of you have heard about that, that saw the cars, but also some of the noises, the dog barking, a thud, crying, some of those things were picked up on those security cameras. There was no front license plate on the car, and the rear plate couldn't be seen on the white Hyundai Elantra, which is interesting, but they have all of its movements. They have enough security
Mhm.
footage to show exactly what its movements were.
Yeah.
And those movements jive with his route that he drove on those other occasions. Now, he turned his phone off during, like, when he got to Moscow, and when he supposedly left Moscow, his phone was off during
Yeah.
the murders.
Oh,
Phone was off. So
100%.
we can't verify exactly where he was during those 2 hours. Again, circumstantial. However, it did match the route he'd done on previous occasions. They continued to be really, really cautious, and they actually had a suspect in Kohberger and had found the car by the end of November. Nobody
Well,
knew.
there you go.
Nobody knew. Nobody outside of a really tight group of law enforcement even knew. The big breakthrough in the case, which you alluded to, basically the lab found a single trace of touch DNA, male male DNA, beneath the button of the K-bar sheath. There was no match in CODIS, which is 21 million people. No
Hmm.
match.
Hmm.
No match. So it's not matched to any current prisoners, people who've gone through the judicial system. No match.
Right. Right.
So then they turn to 23andMe and they start working on all of that. Meanwhile, the family's blowing up. They're like, how do you not know anything? They got some mixed messages in the press conferences. The internet sleuths are finding all kinds of people. Remember when they accused the professor? There was a random theory for a while that one of the professors put a hit out on the kids.
What?
I know. It's
I
wild.
don't think I heard that.
One of the neighbors that was kind of known to be creepy, that person got exposed. People were speculating that maybe one of them had a smartwatch that
Okay.
might have picked up on sounds and stuff from the murders.
Hmm.
Then the profilers start coming out, right? The armchair experts, who are experts, but they're coming out and they're saying things like, it's probably a young male people would find odd and who made people uncomfortable.
Hmm.
No shit, Sherlock, right? I mean, this is not, that's the lowest common denominator profile, right?
Right.
You're probably right. When I first heard this story, and Nat, I really study psychopathy. I am in no way an expert, but this is an area of clinical focus for me. So I've done some work on this. When
Right.
this happened, here were my immediate theories. This is an ex-boyfriend
Okay.
or an ex, someone that they're connected with. Just statistically, that makes probably the most sense.
Yeah.
Or a man that got fixated on Maddie or Xana or both at the restaurant they worked at,
Mm.
because that's a place where a random person could have been introduced to them, right? And I was immediately thinking incel. Immediately. That was my first thought, because it's a college town. These are beautiful young people.
Hmm.
And we see a lot of that with incels who commit murder. That was
Mm.
my first thoughts, right? So we didn't know that law enforcement had a suspect by the end of November.
Hmm.
We thought they have no idea what they're doing. That's what that's what the general public and the families are thinking. Meanwhile, they literally followed him. So they found his car. So what happened was Brett Payne, who's quickly becoming a law enforcement hero in my eyes as well as everyone else,
Right.
he goes, I'm going to call up Pullman PD and I'm just going to have them look for white Elantras. We're just going to look for them.
Just
Like,
gonna
why
see.
not? Let's look around. They put out a bolo for
Hmm.
white Elantras. Well, wouldn't you know? They found an Elantra.
Yeah, with owned by a man with bushy eyebrows.
Man with bushy eyebrows. And right after the murders, that person had registered their car in Washington. Previously, it was
Hmm.
registered in Pennsylvania, where you do not have to have a front license plate.
Interesting.
Yeah. So he registered the car after the murders occurred, whether he's the person or not, it doesn't matter. He did do that. So they find him, and that's when they start really looking at his cell phone history and stuff like that.
Hmm.
And that's all looking bad, big bad, right? It looks like he's been there circling that residence. There were times when he would actually go there and stay in the same place for a long time. I suspect that he or whoever probably stalked this house anyway. Kohberger, we know for sure, had spent some time there.
Hmm.
So Kohberger had told his dad, and I'm going to get into this in a second, but Kohberger told his dad he was having trouble at work.
Yeah.
And I think Kohberger's parents were a little worried about him. And
Mhm.
so Kohberger's dad flies to Washington to help Kohberger drive cross country. The FBI tailed him the entire time. He got pulled over twice for tailgating. That had nothing to do with the FBI. And it's actually really good that local PD didn't know, because they would have
That's
probably
great.
tipped him off.
Yeah.
But they didn't. They literally pulled him over twice in a span of 15 minutes for like
And
tailgating.
that's so wild because I think
Uh-huh.
in some like reports, I feel like it paints the picture that they knew.
Yep, they didn't. They knew, the FBI knew, but the Indianapolis state troopers did not know.
Right.
Did not know. Okay, so Kohberger gets home to Pennsylvania and starts acting like a damn fool. Okay, he's got gloves on, surgical gloves, and he's cleaning his car in the driveway, vacuuming, cleaning I mean, obsessively. He gets his car worked on at the shop. He's doing all of this stuff. He's taking the trash out at 4 a.m. and putting it in a neighbor's trash can.
What?
Yes. The FBI literally has all of this.
So he's probably he didn't have anything like incriminating like he didn't have like piece of clothing, but he's throwing away all the stuff that
Oh,
he
there's
cleaned with.
incriminating things too.
Oh.
But he's, okay, I know. This is why
How
I'm so
did his dad not see it?
girl. I read the affidavit with the court.
That's insane. Well, I believe you. I'm just wondering how the dad didn't see like whose bra is this? I'm just kidding. I don't think he had a bra, but
Well, who knows what he had?
I know,
Okay.
I don't know.
But he is throwing the trash out in the neighbor's trash can. So he gets his car serviced. He's washing obsessively. He did some other really weird crap. Like he wore surgical gloves at the grocery store. Weird stuff. Just weird, weird, weird stuff. So the FBI gets into the Kohberger's trash, and that's where they get the DNA that
For
they match
dad.
with his father. And
Mhm.
it's 99.99999%. You are the father, right? So
Right, right.
this is the father of the person who left the knife sheath under Maddie.
Okay.
This human, that is for sure the DNA on the knife sheath. It was the only DNA on the knife sheath,
Okay.
right at the button where you would have popped it open.
Yeah.
And I'm almost certain that the overkill and the intended target was Maddie, for reasons I will get to in a little
Yeah.
bit. But
Yeah.
that all kind of tracks with that. Okay. Also, Daddy Kohberger only has one son. There's not like other people this could be from a DNA perspective. It's only
Right. Right.
50. This is like so crazy. Do you know much about the arrest?
I feel like I did. I don't know much now.
This just makes me giggle. I'm sorry.
Okay.
This is the only part of the whole thing that makes me giggle. Okay.
Yeah.
50 tactical officers descend on his house. Okay.
Oh my gosh.
I didn't write down what day this is. Middle of the night. Okay. They
Okay.
descend on his house. They bust
Okay.
in the door. Do you know what they find? Kohberger standing in the kitchen in the middle of the night with latex gloves on, shorts and a t-shirt, and he's putting his personal trash in Ziploc bags for later disposal.
What?
Yes. How weird. If you are somebody on that tactical team, you're like, bro, like at least be in your room, huh?
Preston was like, I was like, what? And then Preston thought I was talking to him.
Oh my gosh. So they have a press conference. They arrest Kohberger. They have a press conference. One of the reporters says, your investigators took a lot of flack for keeping information close to your chest. Are you glad you did that? And he just smiles. Fry didn't tell a soul most of this stuff. There were
Wow.
3 or 4 law enforcement folks really in the middle of this, and that's it.
Mhm. That's so wild.
That bodes well for the trial.
Yep.
So now I want to know from you, what do you know about Kohberger?
Well, that he was really weird. He was
Yes.
a quieter guy throughout school,
Mm-hmm.
pretty to himself. And then also he was studying, like we said before, criminology. And
Mm-hmm.
he had done some weird stuff. I mean, reached out to prisoners
Mm-hmm.
who were like convicted of serial killings or who were
Mm-hmm.
serial killers or who had murdered people,
Yes.
asking them basically like for their advice, essentially. I know that's not directly what he said,
No.
but yeah, he was just a quieter dude.
He did a study with Reddit questions asking like, before you convicted an offense, any criminal offense, what were you
Yeah.
thinking about? What were
Yeah.
you thinking during? Right? That
But
was
see,
just Reddit.
but that's not like I see why they might use that as like incriminating evidence,
Oh,
but
I
that's
don't think it's incriminating. I
okay.
think
I was
that's
like,
just
that's not that weird.
the reason it's weird is only because he's what if suspected of doing. You and
Right.
I have to do the weirdest stuff ever. We research strangulation, how much strangulation actually kills someone. What
Right.
do those marks look like? Like they're gonna have a
Right.
heyday with our computers
Yes.
if we ever get accused of anything, right?
Well, and that's what I'm saying though. Like with some of the evidence, I'm like,
Oh yeah.
I know they have much more, thankfully, but also like if that's what they really had, like that was it, it'd be like,
Oh, they have so much stuff.
yeah.
But part of it, I do think, is he had a curiosity
Hmm.
around what it would be like to be a criminal. He
Hmm.
was
Oh yeah.
fascinated. We're fascinated, but not in a like that would be fun to do. His fascination, I think there was some derealization happening, which I'm going to talk about, where he actually was trying on the
Hmm.
idea of doing this, I believe. So
Hmm.
he studied under a serial killer expert who actually wrote a book with the BTK killer.
Wow.
They communicated prison, right?
Hmm.
They
Hmm.
communicated and collaborated on a book. So
Wow.
Kohberger learned under her
Hmm.
and was fascinated with all of those things and wanted to know more. And it's a little bit weird that he was that fixated on the feelings and thoughts a
Hmm.
criminal would have. That's interesting.
Hmm.
He wasn't really interested in treating criminals. He was just more interested in the crimes themselves, which there's a whole lot of people who do that.
Yeah.
So Kohberger was really overweight. He was bullied, and then he lost a bunch of weight and became the bully. So he got kind of arrogant and left a bunch of his friends. And what people said is girls consistently thought he was creepy or odd and that he would, quote, bat out of his league.
I believe that.
Yeah. So he would try to go out with girls that he probably couldn't get or wouldn't be interested in him. And then
Hmm.
he was upset. Did you read about the date that he went on?
A long time ago,
Oh, girl.
a
Okay.
while back.
You got to tell me what you would do if this happened. Okay.
Okay.
They go on a date. It was a little bit weird, but not terrible. I think they
Okay.
went to dinner. He was hell bent on coming in with her when they got home. She's like, we're not having sex. We can watch a movie or something. We're not having sex. She's like letting him know.
Right.
They get in, she starts a movie, and he starts touching her, like tickling her and just touching her. And she's like, dude, stop. Like, don't
Don't
touch
touch
me.
me.
He gets serious as a heart attack, looks at her and goes, I'm not touching you.
What?
Yeah, just deadpan, I'm not touching you after he'd just been touching her. She gets weirded out. She gets the ick. Okay. She hightails it to the bathroom, shared dorm bathroom. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
He follows her and stands outside the bathroom.
What?
She is so freaked out at this point. She starts acting like she's throwing up. She fakes
Yeah.
that she's throwing up. He
Mm-hmm.
eventually is like, hey, I'm going to go.
Yeah, bye, psycho.
I know. An hour later, he texts her, and you know what he says to her?
Oh God, what?
You have good birthing hips.
What was this?
What? The actual, how? Number one, is that relevant? This is our first day. You stood outside the bathroom. Very weird. Okay.
Creepy.
He's not smooth. There's nothing smooth about this guy.
It's not
Okay. He's
even
having a hard
not
time.
smooth. That like is so outside of even not smooth. It's like just
So
weird.
creepy. Garrett was helping me with my outline and he just wrote yuck in parentheses. I'm like, yes, that is very weird.
Yeah.
Here's a few things that may give you a tiny bit of empathy for Kohberger. Not for what he did, if
Okay.
in fact he killed these folks. There's no
Mm-hmm.
excuse for it.
Mm-hmm.
But here's a few things that were going on with him.
Okay.
He had visual snow syndrome. Do you know what that is?
No.
It's when your field of vision has a haze of static, like an
Okay.
old TV screen with poor reception. That's what he sees quite often.
Okay. Okay.
Black spots, visual starbursts, and headaches. Like those are common things people experience.
Okay.
He wrote about this online prolifically when he was a teenager. He also had palinopsia, which is visual trails. So like if something moves from one place to another, like he would see it kind of trail across, almost like if something's buffering, and it goes sort of slow motion, that's what his vision sometimes looked
Mm.
like.
Okay.
He wrote about the following symptoms that he was having: brain fog, depression, depersonalization, thoughts of suicide, delusions of grandeur. He self identified delusions of grandeur,
Okay.
anxiety, poor self image, poor social skills, no emotion, and he was mean to his family and he had no remorse.
Mm.
And he wrote, everyone hates me pretty much. I'm an asshole.
Mm.
He tried the medication Topamax, which is like a migraine medication.
Mm-hmm.
It's known to give people bad reactions, including aggression, and it only reduces the snow by like 15%.
Mm.
So it didn't really work for him. He was talking with people online about this. And then he got real strict with his diet, thinking that this may help.
Mm.
This is another piece of the incel connection in my mind, is incels are extremely arrogant, but then also have an incredible sense of self-loathing. So incels are involuntary celibates. We're going to talk more about it in a couple of weeks. We have a guest who's going to join
Yes,
us and
I
talk about it a
know.
bit. He has a lot of incel rhetoric in his writing.
Mm-hmm.
He also called himself a blank soul. He lost something like 100 pounds. He had to have excess skin removed. And
Mm.
he looked kind of sunken in after he lost weight, and then he got on heroin.
Oh.
And he had a couple years of heroin abuse.
Mm.
He eventually became the security guard at his old high school.
Okay.
Okay. He helped save a staff member's life during a medical emergency.
Mm-hmm.
These are all things kind of in his history.
Yeah.
Now, one thing I want to mention that you probably don't know. Do you know about the issues he was having at work in the week leading up to the murders? Week and a half leading up to the murders?
No, I just know about that he was having issues.
He got into it with a professor,
Okay.
and they were so uncomfortable with him and with his attitude towards female classmates and the
Mm.
LGBTQ community and that kind of stuff. He told one of a female colleague, men are going to take women's jobs because women aren't as smart. So he just offended, he graded women more harshly in the program, all that kind of stuff. So on October 2nd, he had an administrative meeting over his behavior.
Mm.
In the fall, one of the associates had her home broken into. And Kohberger was like, you should get a security system.
Oh my gosh.
Uh-huh.
That's
All
creepy.
of his animosity increased. On the 21st, Professor John Snyder emailed him a list of ways he wasn't meeting expectations. And
Mm-hmm.
on November 2nd, he was put on a PIP.
Mm.
He was put on a PIP at work.
Okay.
So that's just something to tuck away. So he was devolving leading up to this.
Mm.
Isn't that crazy?
That's yeah, it's honestly helpful to know because I didn't know all that. I just knew he was having trouble at work.
Oh,
And
yeah.
there was part of me that was like, maybe he's just saying that because he's like nervous that he's gonna get caught.
Yep.
But I mean, he
No, things were falling apart.
but he probably broke into that his coworker's house.
Oh, just wait until I tell you another thing. You're gonna
Oh
freak out.
gosh.
Yes.
But it's crazy. Like they should have fired him.
Well, I think this was step one of firing him.
Oh yeah, there
Is a
has to be.
PIP, right? That's typically step one.
Yeah.
So he actually applied in April of 22 to have
Mm-hmm.
a research assistantship with the Pullman Police Department. He was one of the four top applicants. He didn't ultimately get the job, but he literally was talking to like the chief of the Pullman Police Department,
That's crazy.
trying to land this thing.
Right.
Okay. I want to read something that he wrote because I think this is really important. This was in his teenage years, but I
Mm-hmm.
think this was maybe happening again leading up to the murders. He wrote on Tapatalk, which is like an online forum.
Mm-hmm.
I've had this horrible depersonalization go on in my life for almost 2 years. I often find myself making simple human interactions, but it's as if I'm playing a role playing game.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like an organic sack of meat with no self worth. I'm starting to view everyone as fake, and everything I've ever done makes no sense. How
Mm-hmm.
did things go this way? How am I wearing the shirt? And who decided that humans should wear shirts like this one? We're all just advanced animals with possession, or is there more that I can't see, that I can't connect with? I feel everything as if I was playing Oblivion, pointless and full of nothing, out of reality, as my family group hugs and celebrates. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
stuck in this void of nothing, feeling completely. No emotion, feeling nothing. I feel dirty, like there's dirt inside my head, my mind. I'm always dizzy and confused. I'm intelligent, but I feel the opposite. I say things I don't mean. As I hug my family, I look into their faces. I see nothing. It's like I'm looking at a video game, but less. It's like I have severe brain damage. I'm stuck in the depths of my mind where I have to constantly battle my demons in there. Or am I fake? I feel myself slipping away. I hear screams faintly, but I constantly bottle away from it. I think about my father and what a good man he is, and how I treat him like dirt because I have this condition and I can't take it. Now I look in the mirror and I see the sickly, tired, useless, and stupid man in the mirror. He's a complete disgrace. He doesn't even deserve to live. I remember when I was 15, I would wander alone at 2 a.m. Everything was so generic, nothing felt like home. I saw things that were not there, a different reality. I felt angry and alone. I died during those nights.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think hearing that?
Significant mental health
Absolutely.
problems. Like you said, self-loathing
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, just really like a ton of sadness.
So much sadness.
Yeah.
And the not feeling is interesting because as we talk about his psychology, which we're starting to kind of get into some of the things that were going on inside of him,
Mm-hmm.
he had all the characteristics of a night stalker.
Mm-hmm.
And Michael Arntfield is a pretty well known criminologist, and he said he's probably a psychopath.
Mm-hmm.
In addition to psychopathy, Michael
Mm-hmm.
believed that he probably had paraphilias or atypical sexual fantasies, and
Mm.
he's probably weapon focused. So, in addition to the visual snow and the self loathing and the incel stuff and all of that, he likely had some of this other stuff going on too.
Mm-hmm.
The average psychopath doesn't roll out of bed one morning and immediately take up murder.
Right.
It represents the graduation of previous offenses.
Mm.
So, one of the things that they found when they went through his belongings, inside a glove that was stuffed inside a box, were two IDs of young women, neither of whom were associated with the King Road homicides or any of those people.
Okay.
Okay, so that is something. He either
Yeah.
stole an ID, went on a date with them and took their ID, something happened.
Mm-hmm.
What this person is suspecting, this Michael Arntfield,
Mm-hmm.
is that he was likely a baby serial killer, which
Mm.
means there's probably other offenses. They are in Philadelphia where he was growing up,
Yeah.
looking into cold cases and other murders to see if he'd done anything else.
Dang.
The fact that an associate's home was broken into is a big deal.
Yeah.
And the fact that every woman on that campus practically that came into contact with them had an uncomfortable feeling.
Yeah.
Women know we have a finely tuned radar.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about Papa Roger for a minute. Papa Roger was the username, the
Okay.
person who started interacting in that Facebook group with theories about the crimes,
Mm.
including things nobody knew.
Hmm.
Okay. First of all, the name Papa Roger is likely an homage to Elliot Rogers,
Okay.
the one of the OG incels.
Oh.
Okay. So this is an incel who has a manifesto, like so many of them. No one wants to read it, but
Mm-hmm.
they have manifestos, right?
Mm-hmm.
So Kohberger had in his possession the manifesto.
Mm-hmm.
He had underlined the following on page 118 of the manifesto. Women must be punished for their crimes of rejecting such a magnificent gentleman as myself. All of those popular boys must be punished for enjoying heavenly lives and having sex with all the girls while I had to suffer. That was underlined, okay, in his possessions
Wow.
in Pennsylvania.
Okay.
So this lends credence to the theory that he had incel ideology, which I believed before I even knew who it was.
Right.
His sisters are therapists. There's some speculation that they picked up on some of his bizarre behavior and may have tipped off law enforcement, but we don't know any of that.
Right.
And law enforcement is not going to show that hand at all until
Right.
court,
Right.
probably. Another interesting thing is when Kohberger was asked, "How do you plea?"
Mm-hmm.
He stood silent in the courtroom, just as the BTK killer had done. So the judge entered
Really?
the plea non guilty on his behalf.
What?
Yep.
Didn't he have to say?
Nope. You can just stand there and the judge, your attorney can, but also the judge will enter a not guilty plea on your behalf
Why?
because they're going to try to give him due process with the legal system. They're not going to be like, well, you're guilty because you won't say you're not guilty. You actually have a right to say nothing, but most people don't. So the judge entered the not guilty.
Oh, he didn't even say he wasn't guilty.
No, and he studied under, remember, that professor who wrote a book with BTK. Also messy. Okay, so theories. Can we talk about theories?
Yes.
Okay, I have so many theories. I want to know what you think about them. Number
Okay.
one, I think his mental health was spiraling. I think he was depersonalizing again. And I think he hit his max of being able to deal. I think he just was really sick leading up to this. That's one of the
Mhm.
things I think. What do you think about that?
That if he was really sick leading up to this, yeah, I
Yeah,
mean,
that maybe he was having an absolute mental health crisis again, like he'd had before those 2 years. He did very
mm,
well in school in his
hmm.
master's program. When he moved to Pullman, he started having issues again.
Well, I wonder, I mean, there's like a whole lot of things. So I feel like if there's any truth to him potentially killing other people in Pennsylvania,
Yes.
then maybe he attempted to go dormant and then all those feelings started to come back up.
Yes.
Like we've heard of that with some serial killers. Well,
Mhm.
they're where they will take some breaks depending on, it kind of depends on the person on the amount of time they take. But
And
I
as he was
wonder,
getting comfortable with a new area, new people, he might have taken a
yeah.
little break.
And maybe, Maddie's beauty triggered the heck out of him.
Yeah, well, he was clearly having a woman issue for a very long time.
Obviously,
But
yes.
I think in his program, women in PhD programs, particularly in criminology, they don't play.
Mm-mm.
You know how you and I are. If there's a weird dude doing anything, we're going to be like, why are you doing that? What's your
Mm-hmm.
deal? What's going
Mm-hmm.
on with you? And that was happening. That was
Mm-hmm.
happening. I believe this is my grand theory. This is really what I think happened.
Okay.
He had a really strict diet. He was
Mm-hmm.
vegan, I believe. Vegetarian, vegan, but I think vegan. Mad Greek was one of the only restaurants that
Mm-hmm.
would serve a lot of foods that he could
Mm-hmm.
eat on this really strict diet.
Mm-hmm.
And if I'm rigid like him, we know he's rigid.
Mm-hmm.
One of the first things he would do is find a place that makes the kind of food that he can eat,
Mm-hmm.
right? I think he went to the Mad Greek restaurant and I think he got fixated on Maddie or Xana or both of them.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I think. I think we're going to find that Maddie was the target. I'll be surprised if Maddie was not the target.
Yeah.
I think Maddie or Kaylee had the most overkill,
Yeah.
either Maddie because she was the target or
Mm-hmm.
Kaylee because she was the closest to the target. And he probably was incredibly jealous of Kaylee's proximity to Maddie.
Well, yeah, and I think Kaylee's family thinks Kaylee was not the target.
Yeah,
I think Maddie was the target and Kaylee was just collateral damage.
collateral damage. And I think the girls were attacked more viciously even
Mm-hmm.
than Ethan and Xana. And I think Xana, in incel theory, there's like the Barbie, like the blondie blonde, typical popular girl.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to get into more detail on this in a couple of weeks. But most of the women living in that house were the epitome of that.
Yeah.
Anna was a little more, she was an alternative. She was beautiful sorority girl, but she
Mm-hmm.
was brunette and she was really petite and just, I don't know. I think she was a little bit different than the others. And so when he said, I'm going to help you, I actually think he was faced with, I have to kill her. But I don't know that she was one of the original targets. I don't know that she was somebody that he set out to kill.
Mm-hmm.
So I think we're gonna find that Maddie was the original target. Also, there are DMs predating the murders by a long
Mm.
shot of him DMing Maddie specifically,
Oh, interesting.
and she never responded. But things like, "Hey, how are you?" Like that kind of stuff. Nothing real creepy, but "Hey, how are you?" "Hi,"
Creepy
liking,
enough.
commenting on pictures. So sure, if it happened right after the murder, you would think somebody may have popped a dummy account the minute this
Yeah.
happened, right?
Yeah.
Problem is, this predates all of that.
Yeah.
Also, I believe he followed Kaylee as well, but the only one he tried to contact was Maddie. And then
Okay.
I read speculation from an inside source, so who knows how reputable that is,
Yeah.
that there were pictures found on his phone of her.
Mm.
That he'd pulled some pictures off Instagram and had them on his phone,
Mm.
saved them to his phone.
Mm.
So I think we're going to find that Maddie was the target. I could be totally wrong. And as you said, Nat, it's a ton of circumstantial evidence
Mm.
without a murder weapon. So all the defense has to do is create a little bit of reasonable doubt for him to get off. And so that's really concerning because I think it's possible they could poke holes in some of this. But like you, I think he did it. I really do. I don't think there's somebody else who did this. I think he did this.
Yeah. Yeah.
But can they prove it?
Right. Well, and it does sound like they have more than what's just the kind of like easy to look up, you
Yeah.
know? Like purposely, like I knew some of this stuff before, but I forgot some of it just because it had been a little bit. But
Oh, yeah.
I mean, yeah, like the easy stuff to look up isn't the stuff that you've shared. So it does seem more and more like bro's guilty.
Well, I mean, there's an 18-page affidavit. And one of the things I heard is this police force that took such initiative and they were so intentional about not letting information leak. If this is the 18 pages they put out to get a warrant, what else do
Mhm.
they have?
Right. They have to have a ton.
They have stuff. They just do. They have stuff.
Yep.
But a lot of the speculation around the defense is they don't have a murder weapon, and how much does it take to get off?
Right.
For OJ, it was a glove.
Right.
It was literally a glove that probably shrunk from blood, but it was not beyond a reasonable doubt. That's the deal.
That's because his hand swelled because he stopped taking his
Yes.
medication anyway.
So am I a little concerned? I'm a little concerned.
Yes.
So that is the Moscow murders with our theories and some background. And we will be on the case when the case unfolds.
Oh yeah.
We will be obsessed. I'll probably stay home from work to watch it, to be honest. I mean, it'll be
Let's just record
super long
it. We can't
trial.
miss work.
You know what? If we really blow up, maybe we'll just go up there and sit in the courtroom, Nat.
I'll be down. I'll go
Thank
visit some old
you
friends.
for hanging in there in our really long case.
I know they'll be a part two.
I'm sure there'll be more as more comes out.
Yes.
But I hope this gave you a little more on the evidence too, because it's very interesting. And again, I read 2 books, went through the whole affidavit. You can find the affidavit online. It's Exhibit A, statement by Brett Payne, and you
Yeah.
can find the legal document itself, and you can read it.
Yes.
And it's interesting. And a lot of what I took was from that formal document.
So I wanted to end with a little bit of the heart piece of this. I don't have a lot of heart for the alleged killer,
Mm-mm.
but I have a massive heart piece for the victims in the case.
Absolutely. And their families.
Exactly. And so the families, one of the things that they talked about was that they do all stay in touch with each other and that they're still in this healing process all together.
Mhm.
One of the really sweet things that Ethan's family did is they created a foundation called Ethan Smile, and it's to help other teens get scholarships. And
Mm,
this is really just by selling tulips because he worked at that tulip farm.
I love that.
I know. So they started this foundation. I think there's going to be a lot more that comes from this and the victims. I think because it's all still
Oh yeah.
like it's hard for them, I'm sure, to like really focus on okay, what's next in our world.
Well, and there's no right way
No.
to respond. Ethan's family is actually avoiding the court drama. They said they may not even go to the trial.
Mhm.
Like they're trying to move on in a healthy way, especially for his 2 siblings who are devastated and
They're trying to figure out what does healing mean for them
exactly.
from the other victims' parents who are real, they're like, I'm gonna see this dude go down.
Absolutely.
And all of it's right.
I
All of it's
know.
the right way,
All of it's right. Yeah.
And so that's where I wanted us to end was just kind of in a space of these were all really beautiful human beings, obviously both inside and out.
Mm,
And, the families are doing the best that they can to navigate their pain and,
mm,
heal with each other. Like I said earlier, I just thought the sweetest thing that Kaylee's sister did was naming, her brand new little girl after the two girls and, um,
mm.
really bringing honor to their lives. So I think
And
that's a good
life.
place to end.
That's one of the things that I've seen with Maddie and Kaylee's families is they kind of lost 2 daughters, both
Mhm.
families. And
Yeah.
so in some ways it's been comforting to the family that they went through so much of their life together, that they were together even in this terrible moment, that they would have wanted to be there for each other, even if it meant
Mhm.
the end,
Yep.
you know?
Yeah.
So thanks for joining us. We have some big cases still to come,
Mm-hmm.
including the Menendez brothers.
Oh my gosh, you guys, I have so much. I'm sure everybody does because it's a hype right now,
And I
but
am not watching it, and it is killing me.
you can't.
But Nat has cut me off. She said, You cannot look into all of this. And
I
we have,
sent you a little one to watch to ease
you
your,
did a little bit.
you
Wet my
know,
whistle.
did you watch it? Watch it?
Not yet. Not yet. Well, because you scared me off earlier. You were like, No, don't watch anything.
Well, don't watch the Mendez stuff, but I sent you another thing that's a totally different
Oh,
case.
no, that case we're going to do. That's amazing.
Did you watch it?
Yes, I did. Weird. You're 100% right.
I was watching it and I was like,
Oh
there's
my
no
gosh.
way that I can just bring this to the table. Like we both have to because the dude's insane.
Oh yeah, we are doing that one together.
Yeah.
We've had honestly some really interesting cases that you guys have asked us to do that are on our list for the next month or so. So
Hmm.
keep sending them to us. We will keep recording. Like and follow us on Instagram. Check out our merch on our website, forensicfriday.com. And also keep ordering comfort, man. That's going to be my Christmas picture this year.
Yeah, for real.
Me and some green comforts.
Yep.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us. And as always,
Bye, forensic friends.
I'm Janine.
And I'm Nat.
And as always, thanks for listening and join us next week for more crime, psychology, and heart.